statement.
Tabele Masemola Jones. I'm the Acting Section Manager for Parliamentary Communication Services. Welcome to the media. My role is really to be the interface between the media and the speaker and the panel. So without much ado, I will introduce Honorable Mbete, who will continue with the proceedings of today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lutabele. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, compliments of the season. I hope it's still in order to also wish you a happy new year. I'd like to start off by introducing members of a delegation of the legislative sector, which is represented by its speakers forum, that is speakers and deputy speakers. Fortunately, we didn't have enough space here, so they are sitting behind me. We have, first of all, the deputy speaker, Honorable Sinodi. We have from 3 provinces members who are speakers and deputy speakers of the various legislatures of those provinces. I have first the speaker of the Western Cape, and they will each tell you their names and surnames. The next one is from the Northwest, and the third one is from the Eastern Cape, but I'll allow them so you hear their voices as well, to say who they are and what role they play.
Morning, everybody. My name is Shana Fernandez, and I'm the Speaker at the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. Thank you.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Speaker, my name is Susanna Danji, Northwest Provincial Legislature.
Good afternoon. My name is Bulelo Tunyuso. I'm the Deputy Speaker, Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature.
You assume we know you.
No. Wait. My name is Lichisa Tsenodi. I deputize Madam Speaker, fresh from Washington.
Thank you very much to the leadership of the legislative sector. We thought it's important that we should be here in this format so that the question of where the decision and the idea of the panel comes from is very clear, that it comes from that collective of the legislative sector. We came up with the idea of having this panel for reasons that you will get as we present to you the statement. But already by the end, in fact, this decision was taken at our meeting in the Eastern Cape, in the last 2 meetings of the Speakers Forum. Our last meeting was then in Mpumalanga. We subsequently had a first meeting with members of the panel that we at that point had approached to see whether they would agree to doing this job that the legislative sector thought was very important for them to assist us with. And we were honored because they agreed. And of course, they had a meeting this morning. So I have been given by the panel a statement that I will present to you. To tell you the truth, I don't know what is in the statement. I assume it agrees with everything that we asked them as an approach, but here it is. The heading is Parliament to take a direct interest in monitoring the impact of its own legislation. Parliament, Tuesday, 19th January 2016. As Speaker of the National Assembly, I have established, as mandated by the Speakers Forum, an independent advisory panel on the acceleration of change and transformation. The key purpose of the panel is to assess the efficacy of legislation against 4 identified areas, which I will refer to later. The South African Constitution calls for the building of a socially cohesive and economically stable nation, united in diversity. To this end, the legislative sector is mindful of its role to take reasonable legislative and other measures to ensure the progressive realization of the socio-economic rights contained in the Bill of Rights, to realize the constitutional imperatives calling for the restitution, redistribution, and security of tenure of land, and to improve the quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of each person. Consequently, the mandate of the panel will be to investigate the impact of legislation on the following 4 areas. A, the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. B, the creation of and equitable distribution of wealth. C, land reform, restitution, redistribution, and security of tenure. And D, nation building and social cohesion. The panel is chaired by former President Kgalema Motlanthe and will assess the impact of legislation passed by Parliament since 1994. The panel aims to review legislation, assess implementation, identify gaps, and propose action steps that impact the 4 areas. This will be done with a view to identifying laws that require strengthening or amending and laws that require change. In other words, this intervention should entail the identification of existing legislation that enables the transformational agenda and pursuit of the developmental state, as well as laws that impede this goal. The panel will conduct its work through public consultations across the country, which will include public outreach and other research processes, such as calls for submissions, provincial outreach, and public hearings. The panel will synthesize its findings from the public outreach and all the evidence that has been collected, and will make recommendations and submit its final report to the Speakers Forum in 12 months. The report will be made public. The inaugural meeting is being held today. In other words, we had to have this press briefing, so we broke their inaugural meeting, and they will continue after this press briefing. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, that is the statement. I believe you are allowed to engage with it, and members of the panel are here before you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. We'll take questions from members of the media, I think in batches of 3. So if anybody would like to start, could you please remember to identify yourself and identify your media house?
Sorry, madam. May I request, perhaps it is appropriate that without
That's perfectly in order. I don't know where you'd like to start. Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Vivian Taylor, and I'm from the University of Cape Town, and I'm also pleased to be part of this panel. Thank you.
I'm Olive Shisana, and very, very pleased to be part and parcel of this transformative panel. And I look forward to engaging with the communities and the public at large on this whole issue.
I'm Aninka Claessens. I've been working on land issues for many years, and I'm honored to be part of this panel. Thank you.
I'm Thandeki Nhlapo, and upon invitation, I did not hesitate to accept it, and therefore I'm a member of this panel. Thank you.
Terence Nombembe, I'm equally delighted to be part of this panel. Thank you very much.
Paul Harris. I'm unemployed, but former CEO of First Rand Group.
Yvonne Muthian, former academic, had experience in the Demarcation Commission that demarcated the 9 provinces, for those that are old enough to remember that, and currently I serve as a non-executive director of a number of companies.
Afternoon, everybody. I'm also honored to be on the panel. I'm Alan Hirsch, and I'm the director of the Graduate School, see if you can write this down, the Graduate School of Development Policy and Practice at the University of Cape Town, which is a center that trains public officials, public leaders in Africa.
I'm Bridget Mabandla. I was in the first parliament, Democratic Parliament, and I look forward to the task of the review and to just see the distance we've traversed. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Eddie Maloka. I'm also delighted to serve on this panel. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Thulani Chefuta, the president of the South African Youth Council. Our presence here goes to affirm the fact that there's young people who are ready to be part of the solution in the transformation agenda in South Africa. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Malcolm Damon. I'm the Executive Director of the Economic Justice Network. I'm honored to be part of this panel.
Okay, I think we're done with those introductions. Thank you. We've got a highly esteemed panel, as you can see. Each and every person on the panel is a leader in their own right. So we'll begin with the questions, and if we could take them in threes, okay? And please remember, identify yourself, name and media company. It's okay.
Thanks very much, Gay Davis, Eyewitness News. Speaker, I wonder if you can just give us a little bit more information about the panel, how it was appointed, the Speakers Forum deciding on the members or simply going on the availability of members. I think it feels as though we're with a new national development. I mean, it feels like, this high-powered group of individuals. How often are people going to meet? Who manages the hard work of actually looking at the legislation? How do you identify? Because you clearly can't be looking in 12 months at a review of everything passed since 1994. So I'm quite interested in how that sort of is all going to work, and who's paying? Thanks. And how much? And are members paid to take part?
Can I ask you to restrict your questions? So we're taking them in batches of 3, and I think you've already taken 6, Gay. Wyndham.
Wyndham Hartley from Business Day. A key component of South Africa that would be able to tell you how laws are or are not working is the judiciary, and I noticed they're significantly absent. Are you going to interact with them formally?
Craig Dodds from Independent Newspapers. Once the report is finalised, what happens then? I mean, we've had numbers of reports coming through Parliament and without any real outcomes from that. If you could just outline the process following the finalisation of the report. Thanks.
Okay, I think we'll leave the questions there for now, and we can begin to work on some of the responses. Perhaps, Speaker, if you would like to begin, or you'd like to say who will assist you in some of those.
On the first question, basically, Gay is saying elaborate. This feels, I don't know how, feels something, but there's a lot of work we need to do as South Africans. That's where we start. That's what we believe. And so every opportunity we have as any collective of South Africans to look at what role we could play in terms of where we are, we utilize that. So we have a particular role as the legislative sector. So we start off with the area of the laws that we pass. And you talk indeed about the fact that there's too many laws that we have passed since 1994. I agree with you. We can't review all of them. So we will obviously have to prioritize. We have to, put our heads together, look at the list of things we have already identified and say, where do we begin? The people I have talked to, both in the Speakers Forum and in the panel when we met them the first time, which was the only time I met them, I believe strongly one of those is relating to the issue of equality, because there's inequality in our society. And as South Africans, we did pass legislation in relation thereto. And I would hope that the panel would agree that that would be one area to prioritize. Whether they will or not is a different question because they work independently. So I'll only really deal with that. How did we go about? We talked as the legislative sector. Once we had agreed with the principle, because we have to start somewhere, we drew up a list. I drew up a list and I brought it to colleagues. We, dealt with it, panel beated it, and we have the panel. Here it is. Thank you. I think other colleagues can add.
Just to add that in the statement that the Speaker just read, there are 4 areas that have already been identified, which includes the areas she mentioned. And so, in a sense, there's an attempt to focus on those 4 themes, because in each one of them, there might well be a number of pieces of legislation that impact on those 4 themes. So it's an attempt to narrow it around those spaces, not to be too broad. And that's as I understand, but the panelists here, they will talk about their approach to what those themes that have been identified. But perhaps, firstly, what the Speaker hasn't said is that we work with the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, who gladly agreed to support the work of the panel as part of their support to the country and the strengthening of institutions such as Parliament, amongst others, and the work it seeks to do. So the insights that we hope we will benefit from this exercise will inform not only the work that Parliament does, broadly speaking, but also we are hoping to get lessons and additional ideas around how in passing legislation in advance, there are systems that the executive uses, for example, before passing legislation and so on, but we would like to get into the nitty-gritties of things that may have happened in the past, which we could learn from, so that the 5th Parliament leaves for the legacy of the 6th Parliament ideas around lawmaking and evaluation of laws, learning from the work of the panel. We thought we shouldn't drag the program too long. We would like it to inform the remaining period of the 5th Parliament. And that's important that we do that. And this is why we thought 12 months, of course, these are busy people. It is only by limiting the amount of time we want to draw from their busy life that we can achieve what we want to achieve. We think that possibly with the support of the Secretariat, that partly includes people in Parliament, but also the support that in their assessment of the work they are going to do will determine what the UNDP will thankfully basically support that program. I thought that's, is there any that we haven't responded to?
There was a question from Wyndham questioning why there was no representative from the judiciary, but of course there is. We have Judge Pillay, Wyndham. So that question is answered. I think the other question, Speaker has asked me to let the panel know that they must feel free to respond to anything that they'd like to flesh out a bit more. But also the last question that was asked was a question from Craig Dodds regarding what happens to the report once it is submitted, where to from there? What are the intentions?
As we've already indicated, what we are expecting to draw lessons from that. People may, Greg referred to reports having been there in the past. It's precisely, in fact, we are responding to frustration in a number of quarters that we've passed legislation on certain things. The Speaker draws our attention to this thing. In fact, part of the racist practices that continue to go on farming communities, but also in other spheres of life, it's evidence partly of perhaps the ineffective implementation of what we may already have. And we would like to learn reasons. Why is it that these things are not being effectively implemented? The review, being a review, will throw light into those areas. So that part of the difficulty of passing laws, even as we do consult, the executive itself consults, we as Parliament consult, but that does not necessarily become a guarantee that nothing will fall between the cracks. In the implementation, it is in the implementation when the popo hits the fan that the real things will emerge. It is from that that we would like to draw what we should do differently when we next pass or review and define the work of portfolio committees in how to handle legislation. So that's what we are hoping we will get to hear from insights that both research and evidence from the public will tell us what to do.
Okay, Jolene, another two. Where are we? I can't see. Ah, Andisiwe, another one. Okay, great.
Jolene van Wyk from Landbou Weekblad magazine. It's already been alluded to that not all legislation passed will be reviewed. So can you just, from the 4 areas that will be investigated, if we can just get some examples of the type of legislation that will be looked at?
Andisiwe Makinana from City Press. Speaker, can you maybe just tell us how is the work of this panel going to be different from the work of the portfolio committees? Because my understanding is Parliament does exactly that, assesses the laws that this Parliament passes. So how then do you get another structure to do exactly what I thought is supposed to be done by Parliament? Can you just give us how exactly are they going to be doing differently to what you're doing as Parliament? And secondly, I would just like to find out, would this panel look at laws that are tabled to Parliament before they're being processed, before they are passed by Parliament? Because, I mean, there are laws that are coming to Parliament that have already been flagged as problematic. Would you rather then look at those before they are passed by Parliament and say, whoa, it won't really make any difference or it will be damaging? Thanks.
Okay, I'm Dennis Kruijwagen, I'm from the New Age. I'd like to know if this whole exercise is saying that Parliament has grown so far apart from South Africans.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Exactly the opposite. In the first place, Parliament, however good we may assume we've done well ourselves, that will be only our opinion. It is in our interest as public representative to keep going back to the public to assess the validity of our own perceptions or misperceptions, if we may so. So this is consistent with our own public engagement processes. We also think an independent panel that is not involved in the fray of things on an ongoing basis, such as portfolio committees, might have a better sense of things and so on. That's one of our key assumptions. We also think that portfolio committees, the Portfolio Committee on Energy is focused on this area and looks at it from possibly a number of dimensions and so on. But it too will not have the ability to look at the problem from as various angles as a broad panel such as we have here. I'm just citing that as a separate example to the legislation that we hope. In the area of poverty, the Speaker referred to the equality law, amongst other things which sought to create, to ensure realization of the constitutional provisions for equality in society. But also it was amended later to enable magistrate courts themselves to be equality courts because they needed to be accredited to do that work. If that has happened, as amended, has that happened? What's blocking that access? Because we thought we should broaden access for people to raise these issues that relate to poverty and inequality. There's a range of legislation that is linked to impacting thoroughly of that. One of them is in the area of land reform, land restitution. That's a key part. It's both political in addressing the what we often refer to as the national grievances, the reason that led to the struggle in the first place in our country. But significantly also, land as an asset is also a very potent economic means of production. Who has it, who controls it, what gets done on it is a critical component of that work. Access to land, who has jurisdiction of it. Aninka Claessens is not an accident in this panel. The deliberate, because of her experience in looking at our legislation in this area, to come with insights from where they are looking at this thing so that we... And so what is the impact of that legislation? Okay. So that's the main thing, not to take over from the portfolio committees and their assessment of demanding what's the political motivation behind this law? Why now? Why not later? Why in this format? And so on. Because that has already been done in the ones that are before us. So that's what we would ask them to look at, unless they are very pressing, immediate proposals that they think must come within their purview. It's not limited only in a mechanical manner. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. Okay. I will hand over to Judge Pillay just now, but I want to attend to the matter of the difference between what the panel does and what is done by portfolio committees. We here are preoccupied with what happens after we have passed legislation. It's all very well to pass laws and you count how many we have passed. The point is, what is the impact on the people's lives? That is the issue that we hope to have more insight into through the work that will be done by the panel. We came out with an elaborate structure, system of looking at the issue of inequality in our society. Has it worked? The evidence recently tells us no. In certain pockets of our society, most definitely it hasn't worked. If you listen to pronouncements by South Africans, why has it not worked? So that's what the panel will go into. The portfolio committees continue with issues that are current, that are coming, that are being passed through by the executive or by members of parliament who are proposing legislation before parliament. That's one process. But at the end of the day, we must look at the impact on society in the lives of people. Has Parliament grown apart from the people? Of course not. Parliament has not grown apart from the people. Parliament is always preoccupied with issues that affect people, either which are being raised by people all the time, which we are aware of, because remember, members of parliament themselves are members of communities. So we need to just make sure that in the way we deal with the issues that come our way, we utilize the best methods possible, or the best methods at our disposal. There was a panel that was created some years ago. This is not the first panel that has been created by Parliament to assist with more insights into various angles, various aspects of issues that affect our people. And at the end, when the report had come out, a special subcommittee was created to make sure that recommendations arising from the report of that panel were channeled accordingly to various entities and bodies that had to then take those issues forward. I think Judge Pillay would like to.
Judge Pillay?
Thank you. I'd just like to go back to two questions that were raised, and to assure you that we definitely will be consulting the judiciary, both judges and magistrates. Why? Because they're a very important constituency who daily see the impact of laws on people, particularly poor people. And of course, by virtue of their profession, they are prohibited from addressing issues of a political nature or social economic nature. So I do believe this panel will provide a platform to the judiciary, and that they would feel comfortable speaking with people who are their peers. Secondly, there was a question on remuneration. Let me emphasize, this is really our inaugural meeting, so we're just getting our act together. And I'm speaking very much personally when I pronounce on things. The question of remuneration did not arise. No single member of this panel raised the question or expects remuneration. UNDP informed us that they will provide funding to some extent to arrange meetings, and more importantly, to arrange these public meetings that we hope to address across the country, as the speaker said. So that's an extensive job. I'm very happy that they are going to fund that. They have offered, though, to compensate some members of this group who come from civil society organizations. So having clarified those 2 points, let me say that this panel welcomes this initiative of the Speakers Forum. It follows the excellent example that was done in this country when there was population-wide consultation on what we want in our constitution. So, of course, obviously, this group is not going to be as extensive or comprehensive because we do have funding constraints. But it's a spirit of consulting people and seeking their opinions, A, on the impact of the laws, B, on the gaps, and C, what recommendations this group should be making. So once again, we're opening up opportunities to the general public to speak to a panel. It's a good initiative because this country does not want to proceed by way of hearing from the public through street protests. So when people claim their rights, they shouldn't have to go onto the street to claim this. So this would be an initiative where they could reach out to us. Thank you.
Okay, perhaps we should take the last three questions. And if there's anybody who hasn't asked a question yet, let's have you first, and before we come to you, Gay. Sorry for that. Are there takers? So 1, 2, 3, and then we can go to you, Gay. Okay, ma'am.
Archie Mtongana from ENCA. We've heard that the panel will identify some laws that need amendment. Now, in terms of looking at the outcome of the panel's investigation, does this mean that there are laws that are going to be changed? Because I'm not sure if I understood exactly what then happens after the investigation and after the recommendations come out.
Bianca Capozorio from the Sunday Times. I just wanted a point of clarity. The speaker had mentioned previous panels. Is that the one that was headed up by Kader Asmal that you're referring to? No.
Sorry, Denise from The Citizen. My question is partially being asked. Just, it's basic question, but is there 14 members on this panel? Is that correct? From my count, from the names, 15. Okay. 17. Okay, can we get a list of all of those names? I've only managed to, okay.
Yes, you will be provided with a list and the profiles of each of the panel members, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, thanks very much.
It's on the memory stick.
It was not the Kader Asmal. That was the ad hoc committee of Kader Asmal, which was chaired by Professor Asmal. The panel we're referring to was actually formed by yours truly. I seem to be in the habit of going in the direction of panels because they are helpful, because you go for people who are skilled, who are highly respected, who you know people have confidence in. And this was a panel that helped us to look at Parliament itself. I remember Prague's governor chaired it, and it had, yes, which was an independent assessment of Parliament. Of Parliament's oversight, you see. Yes. Okay, somebody else must answer something else.
Okay, I think there's some other responses, but I'm also going to say I will have the last two questions that were asked, that need to be asked by two journalists who have already asked. And then let me also say that you will have the opportunity to interact with the panel because you're all invited to, the media is invited to the lunch, which is immediately after this. Okay, so Gay, oh, in the chair, oh.
This law is so bad.
Start from scratch.
It's the review of necessity we expect will make recommendations. Some of those recommendations might be so radical that they suggest this piece of legislation is completely out of order, kill it, or no, amend it in the following manner, and so on. So we expect a review would do that, amongst other things, that there are these aspects about it that are good, retain them in any changes that we introduce. So that's what we expect might come there. But also in the quality of your public participation, perhaps you didn't conduct them appropriately or something like that. This is how you might want to do it differently. So that's some of the recommendations that we assume might come out of the elections here.
The panel will also call for submissions, which would help a great deal in terms of narrowing focus on issues that are of relevance and concern to, certain sections of the South African population.
Mr. Chifuta, did you want to say something? You're welcome to. Okay. Just those last two questions, please. Then we'll go to Mr. Chifuta. And then I have to invite former President to just make some concluding remarks for you. Bye.
Thanks. Sorry to ask so many questions. I just want to be absolutely clear, though, because we've got Parliament, an institution which not only makes laws, but also carries out oversight over the people who are supposed to be implementing those laws and the policies of our government. Parliament's oversight role is critical in terms of looking at how those laws are impacting on the people of this country. I think, for example, of the domestic violence legislation. And I've been sitting in police committees and hearing complaints and lamentations about the failure to properly implement that for most of my career here at Parliament, which is lengthy. How are you going to be doing anything that is different from what Parliament is already supposed to be doing? We have the National Council of Provinces going to the people, taking Parliament to the people at great expense. There are MBZOs, How is this panel going to achieve anything beyond that which is already within Parliament's gift and budget to do? I think it's fantastic that there's such a wonderful collection of people with stunning track records and minds and abilities gathered here. I think it's a fantastic initiative. But I'm not getting how it's actually going to do what Parliament should already be doing. And I need to have some clarity on that, especially because, Deputy Speaker, you refer to implementation. And, that's what is supposed to be happening here. You're not just asking people about what the politics are behind particular policy direction or legislation. You're actually saying, why is this not happening? Why is this not being implemented? And I think we know often, what the issues are, but, and then, what assurance is there that the report is going to be dealt with in this Parliament and that there's going to be an agreement on scrapping the legislation or aspects of the laws that you identify, that the panel identifies? And also why a bill like the Traditional Courts Bill, for example, coming before Parliament, we hear again, why should that not immediately come to this panel for a review to find out whether it's a good idea before we go through the process of perhaps passing it and then finding out that it's not such a good idea after all? Thank you.
Andisiwe?
Looking at the panel, I see people who, even before you go out there to do public hearings, I think you should be able to say which laws are problematic, which laws just sitting here, you should be able to tell us, should have a view on which laws that have been passed by this Parliament that are not really making impact. Do you have any views on which laws, perhaps?
Okay, and then Mr. Chifuta, do you want to speak before the responses or after the responses? Okay, I think you should go now.
Chair, the one point which I wanted to highlight is that it is very rare from all of us, even in the room, that we take a pause and reflect back on the work that we have done. And that is the opportunity that Parliament has provided. It has effectively opened itself up to a group and communities that the impact of the work that it has done over time must then be reviewed by those it is intended to impact their lives. And that is the attitude with which we must see the work of the panel. The point I wanted to make, Chair, is that amongst the panel members, we were actually not convinced that the speaker was to be with us today. And we also thought that we should utilize this opportunity to further congratulate the speaker on the King Legacy Award for International Service that was awarded on her in DC just on the 17th. Congratulations, Speaker.
Okay, very quickly with the responses, Dr. Shisana.
Yeah, I just want to say that there's a big difference between parliamentarians and the kind of panel that has been put together here. This panel is a group of independent people. They are not politically motivated. They are not coming in to say, I belong to this party and therefore this legislation is correct or not correct. This is an independent body of people who are trained, some of them in their own areas of expertise in science. They are able to bring together evidence coming in from different sources, and they are able to evaluate even what Parliament says it has done, and evaluate what even the executive says it has done, and evaluate what NGOs and other academics are saying, so they can bring in a fresh view, a different lens, to look at this whole situation and make an independent recommendation with regard to the state of implementation, the state of impact. There must be some legislation out there that had an unintended consequence, and therefore they can come back and say, here's a problem. We need to do something about it. We say to Parliament, could you rethink this particular legislation? It hasn't done what it is that you said it was going to do. So to me, this is a very important development that Parliament has decided to implement. I do think that we need much more of your support as the media in order to publicize this whole thing, to get South Africans to come out there, to put together submissions that can actually inform Parliament. We want you to ask very incisive questions yourself as we're doing this work, so that we can look at those areas that might have not been, clear to us at the beginning. So we thank you actually for asking the questions.
Thank you. I think I need just to add on what Doctor has just said. If you got this particular statement, you'll see, and during the presentation by the Honorable Speaker, there are 4 points highlighted. And surely everyone sitting today in this briefing, you'll know there are very key national questions currently erupting in the country. And we do know the processes of how Parliament goes about in dealing with matters, invite who, and so on. Therefore, this represents a very, very opportune moment for the panel to assist our institution to deal with these key questions, because there's no question of having to apply the legalities in these particular processes. Therefore, the panel has got a very good opportunity to advise and report to the Speaker accordingly. We therefore believe on those questions, for example, you see on those 4 points, and the Speaker mentioned one of them, the equality law in the country. How are countries grappling with this particular problem? Presently, as we speak, you see the question of land at this point in time. Now, she has, and through her team, decided to say, can we get more speedier response to these questions? And it's up to the panel to play that particular role as requested by the Speaker. And we saw this particular opportunity encompassing to everyone to lay a hand so that we can build our country away from these particular negativities. I think that's the intention of the panel, to play that complementary role to the work of the Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, okay, Deputy Speaker is going to say something.
Yes. No, I just want to emphasize one aspect, perhaps, that we need to continually talk about: the constitutional requirement that ours is both a representative and a participatory democratic process. In other words, in addition to the formal work that a public representative carries out in the committees, formal meetings thereof, it is absolutely crucial that individually those committees themselves often do call on people in a variety of ways, as it was stated earlier on. But it is also appropriate not to assume that those processes themselves are enough, are complete, are adequate. We also think that adding to those insights a team of people working together from a variety of diverse backgrounds to provide us with additional insights is a useful one. It also feeds into what is emerging in the Speakers Forum itself. It's already almost an established practice, at least to some extent, not entirely, absolutely good, the monitoring and evaluation culture in the work that Parliament itself does. So that we are hoping that this report, when it comes back into here, as it is already indicated, it will both be public, so that we get responses from those who were consulted about it and what it is now saying. But we must also take it on board in fashioning this monitoring and evaluation system that each of the legislatures has been required to develop using a framework that you will find in our website, in Parliament's website, of this monitoring and evaluation, intended to assist each of us, the legislatures, to develop that framework. So using independent bodies such as this one adds to that culture, adds to the diversity of thought that we may not always arrive at and get enough of. It can never be enough in the quality of engagement. We would like to improve that. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Deputy Speaker. Honourable former President Motlanthe.
Well, thank you very much. It is our hope and belief that this panel will not reinvent the wheel, will access and collate a compendium of existing legislation as well as reports that have been processed through the portfolio committees, the judiciary, and other sectors of society, so that we come up with recommendations that would improve on the quality of life of South African citizens. For instance, if the burden of establishing a new enterprise is compounded by the number of regulatory and legislative hurdles that have to be scaled, most certainly the panel will look at that and say, this is too cumbersome. It can only work against job creation, for instance, if in dealing with the challenge of unemployment. So the panel hopes to make a very serious contribution in that kind of way, rather than just, to go through legislation and find gaps and recommend amendments and so on. But it has to have, practical implications that would be of benefit to the South African citizens. Yes. Thank you.
And with that said, no more will be said, except to say that you are invited to lunch. the media that is, with the panel members. Please remember that we will send out a press release after this. We'll also, you've already been given memory sticks that have the panel members' profiles, pictures, and the legislation passed from 1994 up to date. Thank you. Okay, if you haven't been given, Nolizwi, please talk to Nolizwi. She'll assist you.